Welcome to the So I'm Adopted podcast, where we talk everything adoption. This journey is not one we take alone. Together, we grapple with raw emotions that surface from adoption stories. We want you to be comfortable enough to heal. So sit back and go with us on this journey as we dive deep into adoption.
So, welcome again to another episode of So I'm Adopted podcast.
Right.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm John. And
together we are adopted. So again, we wanted to create a space for adoption's truths and to be able to share them. Even though we both have a common denominator in this whole situation, which we are adopted, our stories are definitely different. And we just wanted to be able to share our stories and want others to probably come and tell us about their stories as well. But we're just going to start off with our stories and then we'll go from there.
Our stories give the validations of why we're able to speak about this platform. And this podcast is where we will hear adoption truths from other adoptees, adoptive parents, and birth parents and families. Because everybody's impacted differently with regards to the concept of adoption. We will also hear input from licensed professionals such as psychologists, social workers, to get a deeper understanding of the adoption journey, because there's so many different levels and players in that journey that you go on. Hopefully these stories and perspectives will give hope, understanding, and courage to those who share our adopted or are considering adoption, along with the journey of acceptance, reconciliation, and maintenance of being adopted. Those are the pillars that we're defining that during that journey you will experience. It's not to say that you won't experience others, but again, that journey of acceptance, when you first find out that reconciliation, whether it's with those adopted parents, whether it's with the biological parents, even with yourself. And then the maintenance of being adopted. Once you come to terms with everything, you accept it, then what happens with the rest of your life? Do you talk about it? Do you help others as they go through the journey? All of those variables are what we have defined as pillars in the commonalities of our journeys.
Yes. And so today, we did discuss our last episode that we were going to talk about when we actually met our biological mothers.
Right.
But before we get to our personal stories, because just recently, Kirk Franklin had the opportunity to document him meeting his father for the first time, his biological father. And that, I couldn't text you fast enough to send that to you. So let's deep dive into that, shall we?
We shall.
Let's deep dive.
So I'm going to ask you, what was your perspective? And again, having heard our stories and the journeys, what was your, first and foremost, when you first got the concept of Father's Day, I didn't know what to expect. I know he's got an album coming out, so I'm excited because I'm like, all right, about to get some new music. Let's get it.
What?
Had no idea the depths that he was going to take us.
For some reason, I had a kind of a thought that it was going to be him finding his father.
Okay.
I knew it had something to do with that. I don't know why. It's Father's Day. I knew that he didn't, he was adopted and things of that nature. So I kind of had an idea, but I wasn't sure.
Okay.
So I wasn't surprised.
Right.
But how it all came about, that was amazing. That was a shocker.
And we encourage you to go to YouTube and watch the documentary.
Definitely.
To give you some understanding. Don't let this be the spoiler. You need to watch it so you can have your own independent feelings. We'll share ours, so I would encourage you. And you don't have most people say, stop this podcast.
I was going to say,
stop this on pause.
We'll pause for 1 second.
And go to YouTube and watch it because...
And we'll wait before you come back.
Right. You're going to rob yourself if you don't watch it to have your own emotional tie to it.
Yes.
So talk to me about how you felt watching it.
well, you know me, I'm a big crybaby, so I was crying through the whole thing.
Okay.
It's just how he talked about it was a small town he grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
And what really struck me was how he kept saying, how did this one little baby, ain't nobody know about this one little baby, fall through the cracks? I don't understand it. He just couldn't wrap his head around that.
Right.
In this small town, nobody knew that this woman was pregnant. Nobody knew. And how his father, was at a funeral and said, oh, you know what? I used to date, and I can't remember his mother's name. Deborah. Mm-hmm. Just like that. But all these years, no one questioned it. Now, I understand about people not questioning things.
Correct. Nobody want to be in your business.
Right. But for just in my journey, no one wanted to question, no one did question my nucleus of a family growing up, because we didn't really look alike, but our complexions were the same. So no one questioned that.
Right. So
I kind of understand why no one would question in this town. You're seeing this man all over the world. You're not gonna them ears look familiar.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But God does things the way he does things for a reason.
That's the truth.
The first thing that came to my mind is, if Kirk didn't go down the path that he went down, he may not be Kirk Franklin today. We all go through what we go through for a purpose.
That's right.
It's not by accident.
No, it's not.
It's not by accident. But his mama's shady. That's all I gotta say.
So,
that's just me.
Yeah, mama is shady. And what's interesting, and I will dialogue as we talk about it.
Yes.
So what was interesting, his dad said, I was a child when I dated them.
He did. He said that
so
times.
Immediately I'm thinking, did she take advantage of him? You know what I'm saying? You think about it from that standpoint. Because even as he and Kirk were talking, he said, I didn't know anything about her being pregnant or anything of that nature. So as a child, he had this experience. Now I'm going to play. I ain't thinking about that.
Right.
So when you talk about mama and her choices, why Kirk don't talk to her now and whatever it was, that part really stood out to me. And I was like, wow, okay. So, and the father, he broke down and he was like, if I had known. So all these years, and he had no problem saying, if this is what it is, you pursue it. So that, like I said, that part stuck out to me I was a child. So now this child, he didn't go into his experience because he didn't make it about him.
He didn't make anything about him.
And that's the part
That's
the part that broke me. When he said, you determine who you give me access to. This is about you.
Yep.
So the thing that I guess broke me in it, when he said that, I reflected over my journey. And, a lot of times through my journey, it wasn't about me. It was about the other people and protecting their feelings and their space. So my adopted mom didn't want it because she felt maybe threatened to some degree. So to protect her, I don't say anything. My adopted mom, my biological mom, she wasn't ready, and now I know why, but it still was that no.
Yeah.
So in my head, when Kirk's father said that, it weighed on me heavy because I didn't have that. It's about you right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And you know what? Even in my situation, it wasn't about me. It was more about my adopted mom, because I can't say that she wasn't proud of who I was, but not proud enough to say, hey, I adopted her. I chose her out of any other child I could have chosen, but rather keep it a secret versus making an adoption something to celebrate.
But then I'll ask you, do you think that adoption was really, like, how did our culture look at adoption? Because even now, it's not like really put out there and promoted.
It's still not, because typically back then, in the 60s and the 70s, it was more so a shame. It was, you know, oh, we got to hide the secret that took place on this side.
That's right.
Right? But then you have other people who, you know, can't have children.
Right.
And said, well, since they messed up or what have you, whatever came to be for us to be here, well, let's take that and make it a positive for this couple who can't conceive for whatever reason, right? So, I mean, it has a purpose because we're not born by accident.
No, we're not. But it does take, and again, this is why it's beneficial to have those answers, because when you're unable to fill in the blanks, you'll insert different things.
You will.
And a lot of times, unfortunately, we go to the negative of, you know, how I got here, who I could be. And it's always, you know, and I guess that's just a culture thing as well, where we assume the worst.
We do. But we assume the worst because society and our history has fostered it for us to always assume the worst.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's not valid, the thoughts.
Yeah.
But I think as time has evolved and we learn more and we're more aware from the mental health standpoint, you begin to understand that, like you said, from a cultural standpoint, everything that we've experienced takes us down this journey. But we have things in place to help us do some positive thinking to replace those negative
thoughts. Yes.
You know, so even, you know, going back to the Kirk Franklin thing, I remember, and you know, you share your experience, when Kirk got the call and he was looking out the window and he was like, what? And he just kept saying what, that disbelief, that 50, why was Kirk 56, he was saying? 54?
No,
53. So 50 plus years of not knowing. And then he even shared, it was another guy that he thought was his biological
thought he was
father.
biological, but then he's like, when he was on his deathbed, and he said all I needed was that love and that, you know, that assurance. And the guy's like, yeah, I understand.
And he said he didn't know why he couldn't give it to him.
He couldn't give it to him.
Because that wasn't his biological father.
Right.
You know, so again, it wasn't about Kirk, because if it was, he would have said, look, dude, I did the best I could.
Exactly.
I was just there as a support.
He took it to his grave.
You know, and maybe he knew what it, who knows?
Or, you know, or even if he had a little doubt, maybe I might not be his, but I'm not going to bring that to him right now. You know what I'm saying? As far as, you know, he may not have been 100% sure that he was his father.
Or he could have had the concept, I'm about to pass away. It's about me. This is what I need. You know, I think that, you know, selfishness can be subjective at times.
It can.
You know, because one could say, yeah, he had every right. And then one could say, no, he didn't. And until you walk in that path,
that for yourself,
you just don't know.
You just don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know.
So when you first found out your information, like, and I call it that Kirk Franklin moment where he was like, what? When you're watching that, what did it stir up anything for you, or?
It did. It stirred up that when I went to really go face to face to my grandmother, and she shut me down, and then I went to my aunt, and that's when I was like, oh, versus doing what, I was like, you know, because you're telling me now, after all these years, and Maya told me that actual numbers or facts matter, times and dates matter. So I had to really calculate. So I was 37
Okay.
I've been rounded to 40 because it's easy to remember.
Oh,
But
okay. All right.
she said, no, Mom, it's important.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Right.
So I was 37 at the time that this all, took place. So at a 37-year-old with 3 kids, a house, a husband, and all this stuff, all of a sudden you're going to tell me that the life that I lived before was all a lie. Now, mind you, what also I struggled with Kirk Franklin is how he grew up, how he struggled.
Yeah.
I can't say that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
We were blessed in that regard.
We were blessed.
Yeah.
But again, everybody's journey is not the same. Even though he turned out to be Kirk Franklin, but his journey was a struggle. But if he didn't have that struggle, do you think he would have been able to put out the music that he puts out today?
God, I guess, had to take him deep down.
Yes.
So that he could pull out what was laying dormant inside of him. You never look at somebody's journey and say, oh, I want that. People always say, I want the patient of Job. I don't want that, because that means I got to do something that needs that much patience. I don't need that much in my life.
Exactly.
But that's when you are more mature in your thinking and you recognize that these are the variables that lead to that.
Yep.
He has a gift, and God is not going to give gifts and not allow them to come to the surface.
Yep.
So I agree with you. I think that, he had to take him through that so that can come out. And as much as we look at everything that he has in the public eye, that hurt that he suffered with, and probably still is suffering.
But remember what he said? Now, I don't know if you mentioned it in yours, but I know I did. No, you did too. When we started speaking to our biological mothers, how we revert back to being kids again. Remember he said,
I felt like I was 10 years old.
Yeah, I'm 53 years old. And that resonated with me, because that's the same thing I felt when I started really, when I met my mother, all of a sudden I went back to being a child again. I'm a grown woman, like a child. I just want to be underneath her, and it's crazy how that happens. And I'm sure we're not the only ones.
Oh no, I'm sure that's a common thing. And again, this is why you have to put language to situations, because like you said, it's commonalities. We just don't call it what it is.
Yeah.
You talk about that when you revert back. So in talking to my biological mom, we text back and forth, and like she'll call. So I had texted her last month and I said, hey, I got to preach in 2 weeks. No pressure, but just wanted to let you know. And I just was letting her know. So she calls me and she said, do you want me to come? And I was stuck, like.
Is it your question?
Like, yeah. And she said, all you got to do is ask him. She says, we're beyond that. She said, just ask. And it was that moment of like a mother helping their child navigate a tough situation. And it wasn't like a reprimand, but it was her feeling confident and comfortable enough to say, no, this is what you need to do in this space.
Right.
And, she ended up coming, and it was just like that moment of, I felt like that child.
Like, oh, my mom is here.
Right. And I went to her prior to, and I said, well, listen, I'm going to introduce my family. She was like, it's not about me. Don't even mention. I said, okay, no problem. And I said, I don't want you to be slighted, so I wanted to give you the option, to talk. So that whole not knowing, because she didn't know what other people's narrative was about it as well. Right. So again, it goes back to that taboo about what took place and why is she back now, and all of these different things. And at the end, because she met a few people that were there, and I told her, I said, that's my village that has been with me on this journey. And she said, everybody was just so nice. She said, I felt like I was on Cheers where everybody knew my name. And I said, well, they do know your name. And that's the part, seeing Kirk interact with his mom. Well, they hadn't spoke for
20 years.
20 years.
Over 20 years.
But then seeing how she responded, because, all right, after the first DNA test, she wanted a second one. And then she still wouldn't. And he said, if you can't give me this, like, what, you're arguing with the facts?
DNA don't lie.
So
doesn't lie, and they did it twice, and she was still refusing it. And then her sister,
right, was like,
look, he just wants the truth.
So I guess the sister knows something.
Sisters always know something. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm putting it out there.
Okay.
I'm just saying. No, they maybe not. I don't know.
The way she was talking, I think she knew something.
She knew something, but obviously they always say it's not my place to tell you. Right. Especially if she's sitting right there. What would it? You see what I'm saying? You're sitting right there, and again, I don't know what the sister relationship is.
Right.
All I know is she was like saying, "Look, he just wants the truth," so she's pleading with her about saying it. But again, that's her sister. She can't just after all these years, I would think she would. But again, we don't know the dynamics of their relationship, so we can't say what she should have done.
Correct, but Auntie got a little hood in her, because even when
Kirk
called,
know she got a little hood.
She was like, excuse me? And he was like, Auntie. She said, okay. And I was like, wow. He was like, I'm 53 years old.
And she cussed him out.
You know, but that's a challenge. You know, but I think, and I can't speak for you, but I believe it's the same. I think as a result of coming out of that secrecy, we fought, especially in my house, and you can share if you did the same, we fought hard to have a level of transparency. Age-appropriate transparency.
Right.
But create a dynamic where if you ask me a question, I'm going to answer it. The answer may be not yet, but I'm still at least create that dynamic where you feel safe to ask.
Yes.
Whereas for me, I didn't have that luxury. It was because I said so. That was the answer.
Well, that was how it was. That's just how it was.
You know, that was the culture.
That was the culture.
You know, you stay in a child's place.
Exactly.
You know, and I think that you can still have a child in their place, but you respond age appropriately. Because if you stay in a child's place, what it does, it hinders their ability to advocate and ask questions and explore.
Yeah, right. And when things of that nature happen, they're not inept to say, hey, this is what's going on, you know, in my life. And again, that opens up another can of worms of different things, unhealthy things. Yeah. So the way we grew up and the way our kids grow up now it's a different world, even though they have more that they have to deal with. But they're a little bit more aware of who they are.
Correct.
And what, you know, their self-awareness is way further along than what ours were back then.
Well, they're exposed to so many more things.
They are.
So it just opens up Pandora's box. Like, the only thing we had was that stack of encyclopedias if your parents invested. And they got, you know, they got at their fingertips.
Exactly.
The world. They can go anywhere, do anything, like in the moment where we had history. That was our teacher.
That was our teacher.
You know,
and all of it wasn't the good history, because it was missing a lot of gaps. But getting back to Kirk, how he handled his father when they first met. You know how he stood in front of the door and he just had to get himself together. The dad opened the door. It's like, hey, come on in. You know, like it was no big deal.
Because at that point, he still didn't know. The dad didn't know,
but Kirk did. Knew. And he was like, okay, I gotta get myself together.
Right.
I can understand that. Mine ain't going that way. You would have thought in that particular situation when my mom and I first met for the first time, face to face, that we would probably hug and break down crying right there at the door. None of that happened. It was like, oh, Lisa's here from out of town. You know, like it was no big deal. Right. I walked in, I gave her a hug like I've seen her all my life. We're just coming home for a holiday.
Right.
That's how it was. And then, you know, my siblings and my nieces and nephews, they were all there. And, you know, I had my kids and my husband, we all went there. So it was just like, it was
business as usual.
Business as usual. that was the crazy part, that it just happened so naturally.
But it hit you thereafter, I'm sure.
It hit me the next day.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that was a moment.
I'm sure the adrenaline probably helped you navigate in that moment, but then once that adrenaline went away.
Yes, for both of us.
Oh.
We were in, so I have an aunt has her own church. She's an apostle. And, you know, we got there maybe on a Saturday. And I was like, well, wherever you go, I'm going. Because she didn't know I was coming. The rest of the family knew.
Okay.
It was for her, it was a surprise for her birthday.
Oh, wow.
So everybody else knew.
Oof.
Everybody else is at the house, you know, and she opened the door and there I was. It was like, oh. So, again, childlike feelings. Wherever you go, Mom, I'm going with you. Mm-hmm. I don't care where you go. We're there.
Right.
So he said, well, I'm going to church.
Great. Let's go.
Fantastic. We will be right there with you.
Oof.
So, you know, she kind of told my aunt that we were coming to her church. And my grandmother was there. And it's a small church. Okay. Well, a big church. Small. So if there's visitors, everybody knows. Yeah. And it was 5 of us.
Yeah. I thought y'all was singing.
It was 5 of us. And again, I'll reiterate again, it's a small church. Mm-hmm. So we sat on the back row, right? Okay. And everybody's like, okay, we got visitors. Now, obviously my aunt knew. Right. And my mom, she was already there because she was ushering. Okay. And, you know, she started preaching, you know, service started and everybody was, you know, doing a normal service thing. And then she started preaching. And I remember the sermon was Such a Time as This. Oof. That was the name of her sermon. And she's, you know, she was talking about during that time, I think Barack had just been reelected or something of that nature. Right. So she said, well, that was what she was going to preach about, but she went another way. So she started walking up and down the aisle. So she's very prophetic.
Okay. All right.
I ain't looking at this woman.
Because you already know it's about to come down the pipe.
I already know. I ain't looking at her. She starts off with Titus. Oof. That was crazy. Never met him before. And she read him like a book. Wow. She called her son from off the pulpit and said, minister to minister, shake his hand. I was like, whoa. Wow. That was crazy. She went to TC, she spoke over him. We were like, went to Maya, she spoke over her. Mind you, I'm not looking at this woman. She went to Jasmine, spoke over her. I was like, I'm at the end of the row.
That was by design.
She walks all the way around, comes back up. I stand up. She starts talking to me. I break down. And she just holds me so close. Like, it was like my breath was just coming from out of me. It was being sucked out of me. I was crying so hard. Wow. And then everybody was looking around like, what's this about? Right? What in the world? So she said, well, I don't know if I can say it. Again, still saying, I don't know if I can say it.
I mean, at this point,
and so all I hear is, yeah. So she said, well, she calls my mother over first.
Right, just to make sure.
She calls my mother over first. And because I was crying so hard, she calls her over. And then that's when my mom and I embraced and we just went berserk. So that's when she said, I don't know if I can say it. Right. Everybody's like, yes, say it. So they said, this is her daughter that she gave up for adoption. Church went crazy. Everybody went crazy. I mean, when the snot, that was what you would have thought we would have did the day before.
That was meant to happen there.
And I mean, it was just crazy. It was crazy. Then I met my grandmother. And she just went, all she kept going was rocking my hand. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. We'll unpack that somewhere down the line. But yeah, it was crazy. It was, you know, it was like she saw a ghost. It was very, very intense. And then the next day when we left, and we, you know, we didn't stay at her house, but we came over there before we, you know, were leaving. And she just kept hugging me. She wouldn't let me go because we all got up. And Titus would say, I just told him the kids to sit back down because it might take a minute. Because she wouldn't let me go. And all she kept saying is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's all she kept saying. And I said, don't worry about it. It's okay. I'm here now.
That's right.
You know, I'm here now for you. And I'm not going anywhere. It's all she kept saying. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said, it's okay. And she needed to hear me say that.
It's interesting because that was a real emotion for you. Like that was your reality. Like, it's okay.
It's okay.
And I think that is a testament, like you said, we were blessed where we don't have the reality of my life was horrible. If you had kept me, it would have been this and would have been that. You know, people do have that.
They do.
That wasn't, and I'm thankful, you know, that wasn't your journey and story. But you hear people that are angry that end up in the system and nobody wants to, you know, adopt them as they get older. And,
yes.
You know, they end up potentially getting in trouble or whatever it may be. And they have that, you know, you did this to me. So I can respect the thought of, I need to apologize. I need to apologize. That was one of the things that my biological mama shared. Because like the first time I met her, you know, was at my dad's funeral.
Yes.
And
I had the pleasure of being there for that.
Right. And I didn't know it was her until after the fact. And it took me on a different space, you know. So much so I texted my brother and I was like, hey, what's her number? And he was like, why? I was like, if she came to the funeral, I want to say thank you. So I, going back to that child where it's like, nobody else matters right now. Let me do it.
Yes.
You know, and after we talked, she said, one, for you to be concerned to say thank you to me for coming to your father's funeral. She said that pushed her to a point where it was like, whoa. She said her concern was I safe? Was I okay? And was I happy? Those were what she worried about throughout my life.
Yeah.
She said, and being able to come and watch me do the eulogy, being in that space, it answered all of her questions. And then this was God, because at the end of the eulogy, I turned around to the pastor and I said, it's no secret that I was adopted. Not knowing that she was in the room.
I remember that.
That was not planned in my outline. It was, in my head, I needed to communicate the significance of my father always taking care of others, but trusting me, how he entrusted me to give this eulogy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tie it all back in, not knowing that it was a confirmation yell to her. I've always known. I'm secure in it. I'm thankful. Whenever you are ready, I'm here.
Yeah.
And she said that listening to it, because initially she said, I wasn't going to go, but something told me to go. She said, and then I was just going to go in the back and leave. She said, but then I saw somebody that knew me, that knew you, and I know they was going to say something. And then I heard your eulogy. She said, I had to stand in that long line and I had to come up there and speak to you. And in my head, I was like, but if you had just told me who you were in that moment.
Right.
She was like, no, it wasn't about that. You know, so it's interesting. And again, I'm sure we'll dig deep into that, what it actually entails, because it was mind blowing. That was my what moment.
Yeah.
It wasn't, well, I had one when I first got the file, but that moment of she was here. I didn't realize it.
Right.
I missed it.
She was like this close.
Right. She gave me a hug.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh. But then when we had that second opportunity to sit down, like you said, it was that awkward. I didn't give her a hug first. And I was like, okay, let's go. We went to go eat. And then at the end, I said, can I give you a hug? And she was like, okay. So it's that journey of both people having their preconceived notions and then being able to suspend them in trust, basically.
Yeah.
Because they got to trust that she's going to, it's a vulnerable moment.
For both.
That's what I'm saying. It's a very
for both.
vulnerable moment. So you have to be able to trust what is inside of you of, okay, how do I navigate this space? And then be able to pick up on the social cues as well.
Yeah. And that's important because for me, from my perspective, and I'm not saying that I was dismissing her, but I went so back to being a childlike. It's like, I didn't care what she said. I didn't care about her feelings. Right. You know what I'm saying? I just wanted to be near you. I just wanted to lay in the bed next to you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Whether if you said, you know, why are you in my bed? Or, you know, get off my bed. You're a little bit too close. I just met you. Right. You know, I didn't care. Right. I did not care at that point. She didn't do any of that.
Right.
Thank
you want
God.
to make up for lost time.
But that's it. And that's the only thing she would always say. I don't, you know, I don't have any money, or, you know, I have nothing to give you. I said, well, we're even because I don't have none either. I said, but all I want is your time.
Right. And that's priceless.
All I want is your time. And, you know, fortunately,
I guess it's fortunate.
It's fortunate. I did get her time. I just didn't get enough time that I thought I was to get. But again, we can unpack that at another time. Right.
So going back to the Kirk Franklin documentary, he gets the call. He's like, oh my gosh, this is real. He goes and shares it with the people he's working with. And you can see them breaking down.
Yes.
So I remember sharing with you and our crew, you know, hey, this is where I'm at in the excitement. And it's almost therapeutic because when we talk about that vulnerability, I can't be vulnerable with everybody. This is a safe space. Let me unpack it. And even as you share it, you're picking up on how people are responding and what they're looking, you know, how they're looking. So I'm watching, and the people in the room are crying and they're supporting it. And the young lady who was at the funeral, you know, they got the information.
Right.
You know, Kirk expressed that they were close.
Yes.
And just to watch her, because now she's like that piece of the puzzle that was missing to help open that gate.
That bridge, yeah.
You know, so I couldn't even imagine the joy that, you know, she feels, because, you know, if I wasn't there, you know, who's to say that she contemplated not going that day? Who's to say that, you know, she would have been like, yeah, I got to leave early, or I'm going to get there late, or whatever it may have been.
Exactly.
But because she was in the right place at the right time, where God wanted her to be,
right,
it unlocked this other door.
And the thing is, the funeral she was going to was Kirk's aunt.
Oh, yeah, aunt. Yeah.
But
he said he didn't go.
He didn't go because he figured his mom was going to be there, so he didn't want to go.
And this, I mean, God put that on his spirit so that this other piece could take place. Exactly. Because if he and mom had been there, none of that other stuff probably would not have happened,
because he probably wouldn't have said anything. The dad to anybody, he would probably left out, because the mom probably would have caused a scene. Yeah. Because it's all about her.
All about her.
And, you know, but everything happened the way it was supposed to happen.
Right. And the fact that he was shooting a documentary.
And he said he'd never had done it before.
In the 13 albums.
Never.
And this crew was following him.
Everywhere.
And, you know, whatever. And I always say, you know, we like to call the spirit by the wrong name, because we'll say, well, something told me and something this. No, that was ordained.
Oh, we know.
The Spirit is what
Exactly.
led you to do X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
Call it what it is.
Exactly.
So that, to watch that journey, like I said, for me, it was that pain of what's never been about me. It's always been controlled by other people, the narrative.
Yeah.
But then I have to fall back on my faith and say, well, maybe that's what I needed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I'm going to say, God is in control, then I have to understand that his ways are not my ways, and what he does will not always be clear to me. But I always accept the fact that it will always work out for my good.
Yes, yes.
So I look at it and, I wrestled with that thing. When his father said, you determine this is about you, I started crying. Me and my wife are sitting there, and, she got the tissue and, did the right thing, but it was painful. So after we washed it, she said, you want to talk? And I said, I don't know if I should be angry. I said, I don't know. I said, but that statement spoke volumes to me. And then spoke with a few other people that have just kind of talked to me on this journey. And one of the guys said, well, it's like when you are grilling. All you can do is put the meat in the proper position. But on this day, it may take 30 minutes to cook. Next day, it may take 45 minutes to cook. You're not in control of all of the variables. All you can do is put the meat on.
Yeah.
All you can do is prepare it.
Yeah.
Something else controls those variables, but the end result is something great.
Great.
I said, well, since you put it that way.
I mean, do you think that it resonated with you because it was Kirk and his father?
Absolutely. So it was that I'm happy for Kirk. I celebrated. But that little kid, where maybe if others weren't controlling the narrative, I could have had time and found him before he transitioned. And it's not a judgment, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we get caught up in, well, I shouldn't say this. No, that's a fact. That's a variable.
Yeah, that is.
Whether now the motivation behind what the decisions were, that's different. I'm not talking about that. I'm in this, looking at the cards that are on the table. If if the adopted mom had said, you know what, we want you to find them, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, prior to 2000, and I think he passed away 2009, that would have been 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 4 to 5 years of that dynamic. Now, at that time, biological mom might not have been ready. You know what I'm saying? So it might have caused more damage.
It could have caused more damage, for sure.
Who's to say that biological dad was ready? I don't know what that aspect is. So I have to, at this point, reserve the right to say, you know what? Whatever it's supposed to be.
And that's what I say. If God wants that part to be revealed to you, you will see it before you take your last breath.
Correct.
And that's how I feel when it comes to my biological father. I'm like, whether I do, whether I don't, I'm okay with it either way. And I just put it in, if it's meant for me to find out who he is, then it will happen in due time. Right now, I keep hitting roadblocks.
Did you do Ancestry.com?
Oh, absolutely. I've done everything you can possibly do.
Okay,
I've done it. But as far as answering, I can only get to like second cousin, and I've spoken to, communicated to cousins on my biological father's parental side and my biological father's maternal side, but I've only gotten to second cousin. So I haven't been able to bridge that gap yet. And just for what little bit I do know, I don't think we'll ever have his DNA anywhere because he was a Rolling Stone. So, so hopefully, maybe again, if it's meant for me to know, I will know. But as of right now, I've been hitting roadblocks. But I'm not like, oh, I gotta find it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'm still at peace.
There's so many other blessings in the journey. You don't have that one piece. It's not as devastating. It's still, you want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. But
you've been blessed in other regards. So going back to Kirk Franklin, we talked about when he first got the call, how he was sharing with people. We talked about when he first met his dad, when he gave him the envelope and shared, yes, you are the father, how they had to take a second DNA test, and then how the mom didn't want to acknowledge either DNA test. Talk to me about him and his son.
Oh my goodness, yes.
That part.
That right there, considering, and I don't know how much of the background of him and his son who have been estrained for some
we all
years.
Heard the call.
Yeah, we did.
We all heard the call.
That's true.
Yeah.
That did go,
viral.
Yeah, viral. So for that to happen, I mean, talking about healing. Right there, the healing started closing up instantaneously.
His son said, "That's my grandfather."
He said, "That's all I need.
That's all I needed."
That's all I needed.
And it's just like, as simple as it may sound, it was so significant.
It was.
And I think that, for people to watch it being laid out, the family dynamic is so powerful.
It is.
You know what I'm saying? Because now you have 3 generations right there.
Right there.
And I guarantee you they have more in common than they have
yes.
than they have not.
Yes.
So as much as Kirk and his son were bumping heads, maybe the son was thinking, if I had a grandfather to go and talk to, Kirk is probably saying, if I had my father to help me be a better father. You know what I'm saying? And
yes.
then it's just so many variables, but it just shows to me the power of a family bond.
And you know what's funny? Well, it's not funny, but it's interesting that tape went viral for that day.
Yep.
Because you know why? That's how God works.
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't have not happened
if it wasn't going to be this end result.
The end result.
Yeah. That had to happen so that we could appreciate that moment that much more.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. It had to. And the world saw it all. So if we didn't see the first part,
yeah,
then we wouldn't have understood the significance of the second part.
Correct. Mind blowing.
Mind blowing.
And I think and we talked earlier how this generation and right now everything is the information age, and so it creates questions. So now when you have the dynamics of family and people are questioning, well, how, who, you got ancestry that are filling the gaps even then when you don't want to talk about it. So now you look, there's a platform of adoptees and adoption. You have stories. They don't come out and say adoption, tracing your roots.
Right.
They indirectly come with it, but at the core, it's about a family that is non-traditional.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's ultimately, we come from a non-traditional family.
And speaking of non-traditional families, so just this past Sunday, Kerry Washington came out with her book, and she also, spoke about her biological father as a sperm donor from a sperm bank.
That's a whole different
different.
Dynamic. Right.
I mean, that's not even, they didn't tell her she was adopted or anything because she wasn't adopted.
Yeah. She
wasn't. Yeah. Because she's even using the words, I'm searching for my sperm donor. Not, my biological. She just said sperm donor.
But I guess, by all means, that's her truth. I'm not taking away from her. I'm just asking, isn't he still the biological father?
He is. But I don't recall her saying biological father. I don't recall that. I remember her saying sperm donor. Right. Because her mom said I went to a sperm bank. And
so I wonder, does she carry shame because of, it's just so, that rabbit hole.
So she said that, she's known for 5 years.
Okay.
And the only reason she knows is because, again, there's the show Finding Your Roots. Mm-hmm. She was going to be on it, but when you do your DNA and all that stuff, they do a lot of.
Well, she wanted to get ahead of it.
But you have to. Everybody that's in your circle, your parents everybody has to sign off on it.
Ooh, so they were like, wait a minute.
What's his? Oh, Gates. That's his name. So he went to go speak to her parents. Mm-hmm. Because they have to sign off on it. Ooh. And so the mom was like, so hypothetically.
Let's talk about this here.
If someone, went to a sperm bank, would that, would that make a difference?
Yes, it's going to make
a difference. It's DNA. He was like, yes. She said, so, well, then we're not signing off on this. We're not doing it. So I can't remember if he said, my ass, why? I can't remember. But the next thing was, I think they said, well, she was conceived by a sperm donor. And I think they asked for his, well, what do you think, we should do? He said, you should tell her.
Right. Because she's going to ask why.
Because she's going to ask why we're not going forth in this. And that's why she's not, because DNA don't lie. I don't care how you slice it, how you cut it, you can't change it. So that's why I don't understand Kirk Franklin's mom, like, oh no, this is not your father. Are you stupid?
Well, again, trauma. If she, whatever decisions that the patterns of her behavior,
True. You're right. You're right.
And we're sitting on the other side of the equation.
We are.
Not having gone through the trauma that she experienced.
And she probably has had it in her head for 53 years that she believes it.
That's her truth.
It's her truth.
Right.
So I stand back and say, no, she's not stupid.
Right.
But she's in her truth. And I don't know if she's ever going to reconcile with reality.
If you don't reconcile with the fact that your child is sitting in front of you, asking for years, and then they took the DNA twice, and then the man who is the father, like, he's just as calm and it's like, look, hey, this is what it is. I'm here. Nobody that I saw was attacking her for her choices.
No.
It was, these are the cards that we're dealt. Just acknowledge it.
That's it.
That's all I need you to do.
But then she makes it about herself. Oh, I want a relationship with my son.
So maybe she felt like the father coming in would replace her.
But she hasn't been there for 20 years.
And you're right. But maybe she thought that the father coming in would be in position and push her further away. Because maybe the father, well, you got to think about it. The father is established. The father appears to have a mentally stable situation.
Yes.
So maybe it's a reflection of, well, if you're going to get close to him, then I know I'm not going to get close because I don't know.
But again, she goes, so you're going to use this to not have a relationship with me. But my thing is, why didn't you have a relationship with him for the past 20 years? Because I'm sure it wasn't that.
Nope.
Because she's always been in his life. Yeah. He's always known who she was. Mm-hmm. But she came in and out, in and out, in and out. She never stayed because that's when he was with a distant relative.
Right.
who was, I think, 80-something years old, something like that, 60-something years, that was very old. I just don't understand how you have a sister, and obviously, at least we know of 2 sisters, and nobody wanted to help with the kid. I can understand maybe you all were young,
right?
But once you got older, y'all know where this kid is, because apparently it was a distant relative. It was a relative.
Right.
Help me understand. That's like he's trying to understand how I fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
How I fall through the cracks. A baby fall through the cracks. End up with this one lady, this older lady, that said, "Oh no, we're not gonna let him go in the system." But then no one came back to get him, because the auntie didn't look like she was hurting for money.
They look like they've done, pretty well.
Pretty well.
Considering.
I'm just saying, that's just me looking from the outside in. I just don't understand how they all.
But then again, if Deborah was on whatever island she was on, maybe she pushed people away and they were like, you know what, I ain't dealing with it.
Yeah, but even though you're not dealing with her, what about him?
Who knows? I don't know.
And he's like, he grew up by himself, which on the flip side, I'm grateful that he grew up by himself, because
we benefit from his
unfortunately, we benefit from his pain.
Yeah. So, and I know we're going to wrap up. I'm thinking about how adoption has been portrayed in the media, right? Because now they're talking about it, we're big mental health standpoint.
Yeah.
So I can only think of 2, ironically, sitcoms that addressed adoption, and they both were white families.
With a black child.
Different strokes.
And Webster. Yep.
How, that speaks volumes. And what it says to me is that the perception is that you can't, we can. We'll take care of it. We have because both were financially stable.
They were.
Papadopoulos was a judge, so he had money.
Yeah, money. Drummond was a businessman.
Right. So this, we're gonna go and we'll take care of it. I don't even remember how he got Webster. I don't know if it was. I'm gonna have to look that up. We'll talk about that when we talk about media and adoption.
Yes.
But I was sitting here thinking about how it's portrayed, and it creates this narrative, because I remember Willis and them going back, and they would meet their mom, and Arnold really didn't know, and that whole dynamic. But that's going to be a great episode, so make sure y'all tune in on this one.
Yes, because and there's a lot of reality ones too. Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
They adopted.
Mm-hmm. Angelina Jolie.
Sandra Bullock.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be a good one.
Even in The Chi, I don't know if you watched The Chi.
I do not.
Oof, we'll talk about that. That's a good one.
Okay.
But
hey, I'm a binge watcher queen, so I can binge watch it real quick.
I'm telling you, it's 6 seasons. I'm on season 5.
Okay.
But watch it. It's pretty awesome.
Okay. All right.
So this has been a good episode, and I think it goes to show the relevance of these adoption stories and truths. Yeah.
They're and with the technology of today, they are starting to reveal themselves. Yeah. So I'm just saying, some people may want to get ahead of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead and speak your truth.
Speak your truth now. Forever hold your peace.
Hey, own it, and it's okay. It's all right.
It's all right. Yeah. It's okay.
So again, we want to thank you all for just coming into our conversation, and we hope that it makes you think. We hope that it inspires you, and we also hope that if maybe you're not the adoptee, but you know somebody, and it gives you a better understanding into their thought process. Mm-hmm. So on that note, I'm John.
And I'm Lisa.
And so I'm adopted.
We're adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the So I'm Adopted podcast. We hope that this was informative and educational. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at So I'm Adopted. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel, So I'm Adopted. And again, thank you for listening. And until next time, make the choice to begin your healing.